You're listening to the Christian Indie Artists and Songwriters Podcast, the place where faith, music, and life intersect. We exist to help Christian indie artists and songwriters just like you get songs heard. Hey, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the Christian Indie Artists and Songwriters Podcast. I'm your host, Brian, and on today's episode, I wanted to talk about something that I think is one of the biggest battles we face as artists and songwriters and producers, or whatever capacity we're in music and life really in general, and that is the concept of imposter syndrome. So you probably heard of it, but if you haven't heard of it, essentially what it is that we feel that we are completely faking it when we try to do anything of value that we feel drawn to. Now, I know that's a bit of a loose definition, but essentially it's the idea that in all of our pursuits, we basically feel like we're not good enough. And beyond that, we feel like we're just a fraud. We see all of our heroes, we see all the people we look up to, and if we even try to do that thing that we want to do or feel led to do, we're going to get exposed one day, and everyone's going to realize that we were silly to even try it. So that's what imposter syndrome is. And obviously that's a pretty heavy thing. But to be honest, when I first read that definition, I was like, man, that's me. I felt that so many times. In fact, I kind of wanted to tell a story about when I was a kid. I used to play football, and I had two younger sisters. And so when I was a young, I played probably between the ages of 10 to 14. I had a lot of aggression and I had a lot of energy. And so football was a great outlet for me with that. But I was big and I was strong and I was fast, but I would never let myself actually score a touchdown. Now, I know that sounds a little silly maybe, but there was I can think of it right now. There's opportunities where I was, we were on the offense and I could have run the ball and I could have scored a touchdown and, done the whole thing. But literally in my 4 seasons, this sounds so sad. In my 4 seasons of doing that, I never scored a touchdown. I would never do it because I didn't want the glory. I didn't want the pressure because I felt like I didn't deserve it. And honestly, for the longest time, I thought I'd write a book one day called The Touchdown Complex. But then I realized the touchdown complex is just imposter syndrome. It's that whole idea that no matter what we do, we're going to eventually be exposed as a fake and a fraud and a phony because we're not actually good enough. So let me just first say that is completely a lie. That is the devil. That is the enemy trying to keep us from chasing after what God has put in our hearts to do. So now that that's out of the way, how does this apply to us as artists, Christian indie artists and songwriters? And then what do we do about it? Because it can definitely plague and it can definitely stop people from doing this thing in the first place. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today, is I feel like there actually is a way to cure this disease. And I do feel like it's a disease because it's internal, it spreads, it can get worse and worse, but also we can be cured of it, we can be rid of it. So how do we do that? Well, I think the biggest cause of imposter syndrome is comparison. Now, there's a lot of talk about comparison. Comparison is the killer of creativity. Comparison is the killer of joy. All those things are true. But why is that? Why are we so burdened with comparison? I think a lot of it, honestly, has to do with, the way that we're all connected now with social media. And I think social media has an important role and is an incredible tool in us being able to actually share our music and connect with people and build relationships and all that. I mean, there's 2 sides to every coin. But also we get to see everyone's highlight reel. We get to see, oh man, look at that person wrote with that person. Oh man, look at that person put out that song. That song sounds amazing. Oh man, that person's gone there. Oh man, they're doing this, that, and the other. So it can be difficult because when you see that in your feed over and over again with all of your friends or peers or, heroes, whatever it might be, that can kind of subconsciously wear on us. But I think there's a couple things to kind of discuss in the idea of comparison, is that we don't see the struggle. We don't see the trials. We don't see the pain. We don't see the sacrifice because realistically, there's a lot of hours in the day. There's a lot of days in a year, and there's a lot of, years in our lives. So we basically only share and talk about, just a small snippet, and a lot of those things are the mountaintop moments. My thought is that if we only see the triumph, we only see the victories of other people, then in our minds we're like, well, geez, if I can't just make that happen, right, or overnight, then obviously I'm not good enough. Obviously I can never get there, because look at how easy it was for them. But my encouragement to that is we don't get to see those years of struggle, those years of disappointment from our heroes, from the people we look up to, from the people that we actually feel like we want their dream. It gives an unrealistic expectation that if I don't have that thing in a year or in 6 months or tomorrow, then I'm obviously never going to get it and I'm a failure. And also on that note, just thinking about other people's goals and their triumphs, like we all have specific goals and things that we're called to accomplish. So really what other people get and do and achieve, it's not really meant for us anyways. So even if somehow we could figure out how to magically achieve these other people's big goals overnight, it would not be fulfilling to us because it's not the thing that we're meant to get. You know, I mentioned it in the episode on grit, how it's that slow incline that we actually gain the patience and the strength needed to be able to handle those things that we're working towards. So if we were to be able to achieve somebody else's goal all of a sudden, for one, we wouldn't be prepared for it, and two, it wouldn't fulfill us because it's not meant for us. So letting go of that comparison, I think, is really crucial to defeating imposter syndrome. And I think there is another side of it because, growing up, like we have our heroes and we kind of want to be like them because we think they're cool or we respect their talent or, we just appreciate their art. So it kind of starts with, mimicking. It kind of starts with copying, and that's okay. I think it's like a reference. It's like, hey, I love what they do. I kind of want to be able to do that and maybe bring my own voice to it. But again, like the idea of paying too much attention to what other people are doing, it can kind of poison the well, per se. You get the idea that like if you're not doing something and you're not moving along at the same rate, you're not getting the same things and you're trying to copy somebody else in that pursuit, there's no way that that's going to end up well for anyone. For one, you won't be able to get that thing because even if somehow you were able to, even if we could fully copy somebody else's journey and just like do everything they did, and that'd be super weird. But for some reason we did that. Just like with achieving it, like even the steps of the journey, that's not meant for us. So it wouldn't be fulfilling. It wouldn't even be what we wanted. We just kind of want the big prize at the end of the road. But again, like that's not meant for us. So it wouldn't even fulfill us in the same way. So I think one really great tool to lean on when it comes to conquering imposter syndrome, but in this case, the comparison game, is celebrating each other. Instead of saying, oh man, I wish I could have what he or she has, say, man, that's awesome that they got that. They must have worked really hard to get that because that does not seem like it's an easy thing to do, an easy goal to accomplish. So praise God and celebrate their victory because, I have this thing, bitterness and gratefulness cannot sit in the same heart. So if we might covet somebody else's goal or dream, but if we replace that with celebrating what they've achieved, then for one, that's going to make us feel a lot better. We're going to feel at peace. We're not going to feel like we're lacking anything. And also, we're encouraging somebody else to continue to chase after what they're called to do. So I think that's a really important way to kind of overtake that. Now, I will say too, a caveat with all this is that this isn't easy stuff. Because you could probably be scrolling on your phone right now and see something that you wish that you could achieve. We all do that because there's amazing people doing amazing things in this world. But my challenge to myself and to you is that when you see those things, start to try to train yourself to lead with celebrating and lead with gratitude towards that person and just realize that the struggles that they've gone through, they've worked probably very hard to achieve whatever that is. And so celebrating that is just a great practice to get into the mindset of doing. So I think the last point I want to make in this episode is the idea that imposter syndrome is not of God, it's of the enemy. We have a really cool thread going in our Facebook group right now. And if you're not a part of that group, go check out Christian Indie Artists and Songwriters Facebook group. It's a small group, but there's a lot of honesty and a lot of vulnerability in there that we're talking through these types of things together. So if that's something that you're interested in, I definitely encourage you to click the link below and join the group because we can continue on the conversation, encouraging each other there. But with that in mind, I was brought back to the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve were free to hang out in the garden and just hang out with God and just live an amazing sinless, shameless life. And then the serpent came in and he said, hey, I bet you that you guys really should eat from that tree. You can be like him. All you have to do is kind of do the thing. Don't listen to what he says. And that's a lie. But that is, in a way, the imposter syndrome, the comparison game. Because they're like, hey, well, they heard the little lie of the enemy get in their head, and they're like, hey, what if that's true? What if we can be like God? All we have to do is, kind of do what the snake said and eat the apple. And then, he's no better than us. It's just... So then we know how that kind of turned out. And that literally changed all of humanity forever. And I feel like that kind of started with the comparison game. And in a bigger way, the imposter syndrome. There's so much insecurity that we feel like if we're not where that person is or where we feel like we should be, then we'll never get there. We're not good enough. And the biggest lie of imposter syndrome in total is that we feel like one day people are going to realize that, hey, we have no clue what we're doing and we're just a big fraud and a faker. And that is not true. God created us all to do this. All of our paths are different. All of our trajectories are different. All the goals that we're built to achieve are different. So I think sticking close to God, following after His call in our lives with laser focus, and celebrating the victories of others are really crucial elements in actually defeating this thing, because we do not have to live with imposter syndrome because it's not real. Now, it's a real thing. It's a real lie. The lie is real, but it's not something that we have to just deal with forever. So I think by getting in the habit of celebrating others and fixing our eyes on God and His plan for us is the best way for us to actually defeat imposter syndrome. So I hope that this was encouraging to you. I hope that you can take some of these things, work them into your life. Also, don't forget to go over to the Facebook group, Christian Indie Artists and Songwriters, and follow the group. Jump in the group. We'd love to talk to you. We'd love to have you in the group. And I hope that you enjoy this episode, and we'll see you in the next one. We want to help reach as many Christian indie artists and songwriters as possible, and one way we can do that is with your help. So if you could take a minute and leave us a review on iTunes, that would be so appreciated. This is how the iTunes algorithm will push this content out to more and more Christian indie artists and songwriters. So like I said, if you could just take a couple seconds, leave us a review, that would be so awesome, means so much to us, and we would really appreciate it.